This is Jeff Zeig in Phoenix, Arizona at the offices of the Milton Erickson Foundation. I want to talk about one of the techniques that Milton Erickson was famous for. When asked what were the two most important contributions he made to the literature, he said the confusion technique, a destabilization technique, and the interspersal technique, an associative technique. Let's talk first about the confusion technique. When Erickson invented the confusion technique, it was kind of a hard confusion. It was meant to attack the resistances. The initial article, I don't remember, 63 or 64, was about the confusion technique for resistant patients. And Erickson could somehow create this kind of attacking confusion that would go on by using word plays and using negation, double negation, and by the apposition of opposites. So a hard confusion technique could be something like, you have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, and your conscious mind has ways of understanding. And the kind of conscious understandings that you unconsciously understand are different from the unconscious understandings that you consciously understand. But then there are misunderstandings, and you can consciously understand your unconscious misunderstandings, or you can unconsciously misunderstand your conscious understandings. But you can't really understand until you take an easy breath, close your eyes, and begin to allow yourself to comfortably go inside. Now, oh my gosh, I'll do anything to avoid that confusion. People don't like uncertainty states, and so they're more apt to grasp onto the first thing that comes along and makes sense. Now, I've saw Erickson begin inductions. Many times he would begin inductions by doing something that was confusing, something that actually increased the amount of tension. And that is something that is really not been followed through by many of the people who walk in Erickson's footsteps. How do you use arousal states? And confusion is an arousal state, but we could think about confusion in regard to music. In music, you have consonance and dissonance. You need dissonance, but dissonance is just an unstable harmony that promises a stable harmony to follow. Now, most people, when they learn hypnosis, the slope of their induction, the slope of the way that they're suggesting relaxation is so the induction becomes like a lullaby. Well, what Erickson would do is he would use destabilizing techniques, and he would be modulating the level of tension. He might even start by increasing tension, and then, like Beethoven in creating a symphony, he would be modulating tension through the course of the induction. This is something that's been very hard for me to teach my students. How can you create an induction in which modulating the level of tension is something that you can do effectively? And you don't have to use this kind of attacking hard confusion, but you can think about creating little moments of destabilization. One of Dr. Erickson's most famous inductions at the end of his career was the early learning set. He would be talking about how someone learns the intricacies of learning to write the letters of the alphabet. And he would get the person absorbed in living the memory of learning to write the letters of the alphabet. And he would start by saying, how many bumps are there in an N and an M? And then, did you dot the T and cross the I? Now, suddenly you would be a little bit of destabilized. Did he say that right? Is that the way that he meant it? And and where do you put the circle on the line for the D and the P and the B? And how many bumps are there in an N and an M? And why did he say N before M? And so there was momentary ways in which he would be using, creating a spice that created more vibrancy in the hypnotic recipe by using arousal states. I invite you to learn to read Erickson's article on the confusion technique, but then to begin to think about soft kinds of confusion rather than the kind of hard confusion that Erickson made famous. I don't use that kind of hard confusion in my work, but creating destabilizing moments that modulate the level of tension, both in hypnosis and in psychotherapy, is creating a symphony rather than a lullaby. This is Jeff Zeig with another 5-minute tip for therapists here in Phoenix, Arizona at the offices of the Milton Erickson Foundation. Thank you.